Andre Thomas never thought he'd speak up again. Not after everything he walked away from. Not after trading intelligence briefings for bathroom bleach. Not after he promised his daughter no more missions, no more danger, and no more disappearing in the middle of the night without saying goodbye. But something didn't sit right. It started with a painting. Ocean waves frozen mid-crash, tucked in the back wall of the CEO's office at NeuroSync, the most secure tech tower in Atlanta. At first, it was just a flicker, barely visible under the infrared sweep of his cleaning cart's motion sensor. But Andre saw it. He always saw the things no one else bothered to. That's what made him so dangerous. So when Danielle Brooks, the CEO herself, brushed past him in her navy blazer and 6-inch heels, Andre said just loud enough for her to hear, "There's a live feed broadcasting from that painting behind your desk." She didn't stop. Not at first. Then, like someone just nudged her out of autopilot, she glanced back. "Excuse me," I said, Andre repeated. "Someone's watching you. And it's not your security team." She paused. One heartbeat. Ooh. Then laughed. That kind of corporate laugh. Polite enough to be professional, but sharp enough to cut. "You clean floors, Mr. Thomas." Andre Thomas. She nodded, smiled, dismissed him. "Thanks for your concern. Next time, leave the tech to the professionals." She kept walking. Andre didn't. Because what she didn't know was that once upon a time, Andre was the professional. He used to train the people who trained the people she now paid to protect her. And the moment he saw that flicker, he knew what it meant. This wasn't surveillance. This was a setup. As he leaned against his cart, watching her vanish behind frosted glass, he said under his breath, "The most dangerous thing about a trap is thinking you're the one who set it." And somewhere above them, hidden in ductwork and shadows, a red light blinked. Once. Then twice. Because this isn't just another corporate drama. This is the story of a father, a janitor, and the day he stopped sweeping around the edges and stepped straight into the fire. Andre Thomas didn't keep many photographs. Not because he didn't care, but because remembering used to hurt more than forgetting. There was one, though, folded inside an old wallet he didn't carry anymore. A picture from 10 years ago. Him and Camille. Her smile was the kind that made you believe things were possible again. Back then, he was still working black-level missions, traveling under aliases, disappearing between state lines and sandstorms. But Camille had grounded him. A school counselor. Kind eyes. A voice like warm rain. She didn't care that he worked in the shadows. She just wanted him to come home. And for a while, he did. Until the day she didn't come home. Wrong place. Wrong hour. One corner store. One bullet meant for someone else. Andre had all the intel. All the names. He could have stopped it. Should have. But he was too late. That's when he broke. He packed up the house, shut down every trace of the life he'd built in the field, and moved to the one city no one would ever think to look for him, Atlanta. A city big enough to hide grief, but small enough for Nia, their daughter, to grow up without the weight of a father still chasing ghosts. He became the man who cleaned the corners. Started work at NeuroSync under a fake resume and real exhaustion. The managers liked him because he never complained. The guards trusted him because he knew how to stay invisible. And he liked that. Being invisible meant no one expected anything. No one asked why he carried an old burner phone or why he knew more about the building's layout than the blueprints ever showed. It meant he could protect Nia from a world she wasn't ready for, and that he wasn't ready to explain. But that painting, that signal, it changed everything. Because if someone had breached NeuroSync, the most secure behavioral analytics firm in the Southeast, then they weren't just targeting data. They were targeting power, influence, control, and Andre knew how that game ended. He'd seen it unravel governments, flip elections, wipe entire legacies clean. He wasn't going to let that happen again. Especially not here. Especially not when his daughter's school was only 6 blocks from the building broadcasting that pulse. As Andre stood in the dim break room that night, coffee gone cold, hands clenched tighter than his jaw, he pulled out a small flash drive from his back pocket. A backup of every signal ping he'd tracked in the last 6 months. Locations, times, frequencies. His thumb hovered over the encrypt button. He hadn't used those protocols in years. But tonight? He wasn't just a janitor. He was a father with unfinished business, and a storm coming through the walls. Andre always said his daughter saw the world in wires. Not the kind you plug into walls, but the kind most people don't even know are there. Signals, frequencies, invisible lines of connection whispering through the air like secrets. Nia Thomas was 10 years old and already knew how to hijack a Bluetooth speaker without ever touching it. She once reprogrammed a talking toy to speak in Japanese, just to see if the syntax held. Andre had walked into her room that night to find her holding a screwdriver in one hand and a soldering iron in the other, humming to Billie Holiday like it was just another Tuesday. She was her mother's heart and her father's mind. Curious, compassionate, and utterly incapable of ignoring a question that hadn't been answered. Which is why, when Andre walked into their small apartment that night, she was already sitting cross-legged on the living room floor, surrounded by wires, circuit boards, and an old-school Chromebook that had been gutted and rebuilt 3 times over. "Dad," she said without looking up, "do LED lights ever carry signatures?" Andre froze. She pointed to a graph on the screen. Multiple waveforms overlaying each other in distinct, rhythmic pulses. I ran a scan of the hallway lights at NeuroSync. The ones near your cart station? They're emitting a repeating pattern. Not typical for industrial LEDs. At first I thought it was a glitch in the ballast. But then I noticed something else. She turned the screen. A blueprint of the NeuroSync building, hand-drawn and overlaid with green dots. Each dot corresponded with one of the light fixtures, except 3 were blinking red. Andre stepped closer, his stomach turning. "The pulses aren't syncing with the building's automated systems," Nia explained. "They're piggybacking, broadcasting through intervals that don't match any utility cycles. I compared it to our school Wi-Fi, same frequency, same spike." "You ran a scan at school?" he asked, voice low. She looked up, sheepish. "Just at the corner by the library. I wanted to know if it was everywhere." Andre rubbed his temple. "Sweetheart, this isn't just a school project. This is surveillance. This is serious." "I know," she said quietly. "That's why I mapped it." He sat down beside her, staring at the blinking red nodes on the map. They weren't random. They followed the elevators, the server room, the executive floor. It was a network, a hidden one, and his daughter had uncovered it before the company's security team even noticed it existed. "Nia," he said gently, "you can't go scanning buildings without telling me." "But you always told me," she replied. "Real protection starts with paying attention." He didn't know whether to be proud or terrified. Probably both. He wrapped an arm around her shoulder, pulled her close. "You see too much for your own good, kid." She leaned into him. "You do too, Dad." And in that moment, surrounded by blinking lights and broken rules, Andre realized something chilling. Whatever was watching NeuroSync had already found a way into their lives. And they were running out of time. The painting was still there. Storm gray waves, frozen in motion, brushstrokes too precise to be casual. It hung silently in Danielle Brooks' executive office, framed in matte steel, lit from above by a recessed spotlight. Most people would see art. Andre saw a disguise. It had been bothering him for weeks. Not the painting itself, but the way it hummed. A frequency. Subtle. Too subtle. You wouldn't catch it with your ears, but Andre's instincts were trained for more than sound. He could feel it. Like the air shifted just slightly when you got too close. Like static before a storm. That night, long after the building emptied, he returned. He disabled the hallway camera with a $10 RF blocker he built from spare parts and walked into the office with nothing but a flashlight, gloves, and a quiet breath. The room was dark except for the LED strip under the desk and the pale moonlight stretching across the floor. Andre approached the painting, heart steady, not from calm, but from practice. He reached up and traced the bottom edge of the frame. Smooth. Too smooth. No dust. No texture. And on the far right corner, there it was. A microscopic seam. The kind you only noticed if you'd been trained to place it. He pried it open with a flathead pick tucked in his sleeve. The panel clicked. Barely audible. Behind it was a device no bigger than a deck of cards. Fiber optic lines, microcap battery, 2 narrow antennas tucked into a relay junction. It wasn't corporate. It wasn't security issue. It was military. And it was blinking. A slow, pulsing red. Heartbeat. Live. Andre swallowed. The relay was active. And if it was active, it could be trapped. He reached into his back pocket and pulled out a handheld jammer. Dialed the frequency. Began the scramble. Suddenly. Click. A hiss. Faint. Mechanical. His training screamed at him. Andre dropped to the floor just as a quiet pop echoed from inside the wall. Smoke. No flame. But heat. Controlled detonation. They hadn't planted a camera. They'd planted a decoy, rigged to fry the moment it was tampered with. Andre covered his mouth, coughed once, and reached in with his gloved hand. Half the relay was melted, but one sliver of internal memory had survived. Just enough to ID the make and model. Russian firmware. Not recent, but not ancient either. That meant two things. One, this wasn't just espionage. It was legacy tech, repurposed for local infiltration. Two, someone wanted to be caught. Or rather, they wanted him to know they knew he was looking. Andre didn't panic. He packed what was left of the device, reset the wall panel, and stepped out into the corridor like he was just another janitor clocking out. But inside, his mind was already turning gears. This wasn't a leak. It was a message. And whoever sent it had just made the first move. Danielle Brooks didn't like being questioned. She built her life on precision, clean lines, sharper minds, and a firm belief that leadership meant control. She hadn't clawed her way to CEO of NeuroSync to be second-guessed by a janitor with calloused hands and cryptic warnings. But the painting haunted her now. It sat silent on her desk, not on the wall where it belonged. Not after what she saw through that infrared app, the one her cybersecurity chief once told her she'd never need. That soft red pulse, faint but steady, buried in the canvas. Watching. She hadn't slept well since. Danielle had been many things: engineer, strategist, leader, but never paranoid. Paranoia, to her, was what happened to people who didn't control the narrative. But now, the story was slipping from her hands, word by word. She called a private meeting that morning with her senior team. Closed door. No assistants. Just her, 3 division heads, and her COO, Victor Rains. The room was sterile. Glass, chrome, untouched pastries in the corner. Danielle didn't touch her coffee. She went straight in. "There's been unauthorized activity in our executive floor," she said flatly. "Signal interference. Possibly surveillance." Rains leaned back, too relaxed. "Corporate espionage? That's a big accusation." "Not an accusation," she replied. "An observation." Another exec, Elliot Chan from Product, raised an eyebrow. "And how did you find this observation?" Danielle hesitated for a breath. An internal source noticed an anomaly. Rains gave a thin smile. Would this source happen to carry a mop and quote Sun Tzu in elevators? The room chuckled. Danielle didn't. "Laugh if you want," she said. "But that man has seen things the rest of us miss." Silence returned. Uneasy. She continued, "We're launching a quiet sweep of all conference rooms and executive terminals. No alerts. No memos. I don't want the board involved, yet." "You think this goes that high?" Elliot asked. "I think," she said carefully, "that if someone can install a foreign device in the heart of our building without tripping a single system alert, they're already inside." No one argued. They didn't need to. The truth was there, thick in the air. After the meeting, Danielle stood alone at the massive window in her office. 52 floors above the city. It should have felt powerful. It just felt small. She thought about the janitor, Andre Thomas. The way he said, "You're not paranoid. You're late." The way he looked at her, not with deference, not with doubt, but with calculation. Like he wasn't trying to warn her. He was trying to measure how much she could handle. And for the first time in years, Danielle asked herself a question she never liked. What if I missed something? Not because she wasn't smart, but because she trusted too easily the people who said they were on her side. Behind her, the painting still sat on the desk, its surface blank, the camera now removed, but its presence still heavy. Danielle turned toward it, and for the first time, whispered a truth she'd never admitted aloud. I don't know who's watching me, and worse, I don't know who's left to trust. It happened on a Thursday. Warm skies, light breeze, parents scrolling phones in the carpool line, kids laughing over lunchroom pizza. Just another regular school day, until it wasn't. At exactly 3:42 p.m., the school's main office logged a visitor. Female, mid-30s, NeuroSync branded ID badge clipped to a gray blazer. She asked for Nia Thomas by name. Said it was a corporate emergency. Said her father, Andre Thomas, had authorized the pickup due to a family issue. The receptionist checked the system. There it was, his name, his security clearance, even a signed digital form. Except Andre never sent anyone. He was still at work. Still mopping floors and scanning for shadows. Still unaware that his world was about to fracture again. The call came at 3:51 p.m. Hi, Mr. Thomas. This is Principal Monroe from West Ridge Elementary. Just confirming that your colleague from NeuroSync picked up Nia? She mentioned. Andre didn't let her finish. What colleague? He said, voice already cold steel. There was a pause. Then confusion. The woman, she showed ID, said she was from your building. Nia recognized her. Andre's breath caught. Recognized her? That meant whoever this was had studied them, had prepared. He didn't waste time. He dropped his mop, bolted through the service corridor, and hit the stairs like a man chasing a ghost. 4 flights down, keys already in hand, heart punching against his ribs like a battering ram. Not again. He wouldn't lose her too. By the time he hit the parking lot, tires screeched. He tore across Midtown Atlanta in under 9 minutes. Ran 2 red lights. Cut off a city bus. Didn't care. The school parking lot was empty by then. Just a few straggling staff and a confused custodian with a walkie-talkie. Vivian was already there. She'd gotten a copy of the alert forwarded from internal security, triggered when a NeuroSync badge number had been flagged as inactive. It had been decommissioned 6 months ago. Andre barely glanced at her. Where is she? He demanded. Principal Monroe met him outside the entrance, white-faced and shaking. She went willingly, she stammered. The woman said her name was Amara Lane. She had clearance. The same code used to check Nia out last week after her dental appointment. Andre's mind reeled. He had taken Nia to the dentist, but had never uploaded that info, which meant someone wasn't just watching. They were mimicking. Show me the footage, he said. An hour later, they had it. Grainy. Choppy. A silver SUV. Tinted windows. But for a single frame, Nia's pink backpack visible through the glass. No license plate. Just a sticker on the rear bumper. A stylized triangle inside a broken circle. Andre stared. He'd seen that symbol before. Years ago. Deep in a file marked Project Marrow. An op that was supposed to be buried. Andre clenched his jaw. They didn't just take her, he said. They left a signature. Vivian's eyes widened. They're not hiding? No, Andre said, voice dark. They want me to come find her. The warehouse had once been a data bunker, a satellite hub for NeuroSync during its early expansion, back when they were still just a promising startup with more ambition than oversight. 5 years ago, the company relocated operations downtown and left the place behind. The servers were gutted. The fiber lines rerouted. At least, that's what the record said. But Andre didn't trust records anymore. The thermal scans didn't lie. He and Vivian pulled up in silence, their SUV parked half a block away, hidden behind a rusted-out van with a missing door and flat tires. The air was thick with Georgia humidity and the smell of scorched metal. Vivian checked the tablet in her lap. 2 signatures inside. 1 small. Stationary. 1 pacing. Andre nodded. That's her. And whoever's watching her. Back up. He shook his head. No time. She exhaled. I'm not built for this. He looked at her. You're here. That's enough. They moved quickly, Andre at point, Vivian behind, armed with a signal jammer and a small flash drive preloaded with a scrambler worm. He'd taught her how to use it in the car. Once inside, she'd plug it into the nearest terminal and kill any outgoing feed. The front entrance was chained, but the side door was loose, like someone wanted them to find it. That alone made Andre's jaw tighten. Inside, the air was cooler, heavy with dust. Fluorescent lights flickered above old server racks, some still humming faintly. The noise wasn't loud, but to Andre, it was screaming. They followed the signal to the second level. An old operations room turned holding cell. No guards. No alarms. Just Nia, sitting cross-legged on a chair in the center of the room, arms folded, eyes calm. Across from her sat a woman in black slacks and a NeuroSync ID clipped to her coat. Amara Lane. She looked up as Andre stepped in, and to her credit, didn't flinch when he pointed a stun pen straight at her chest. "Easy," she said. "No one's touched her." "Wrong answer," Andre snapped. "Dad." Nia's voice broke the tension. "I'm okay. She didn't scare me." That nearly undid him. But he didn't lower the stun pen. "Why?" he asked Amara. "Why the badge, the pickup, the stunt?" Amara raised her hands. "I didn't come to hurt anyone. I came to be heard." Vivian stepped in behind him. "You kidnapped a child." Amara's eyes locked with hers. "Because no one listens to whistleblowers anymore, until something breaks." She pulled a small drive from her pocket, slid it across the floor. "That's everything. The project. The relay installs. The off-grid routing nodes. Victor Rains has been building a shadow network under your feet." Vivian froze. "Rains?" Amara nodded. "You trusted him." "Everyone did. But he's not loyal to NeuroSync. He's loyal to whoever's paying him to rip it apart." Andre finally lowered the pen. Slightly. Nia got up, crossed the room, and hugged him tight. "You're late," she whispered. He smiled. "I came as fast as I could." Vivian picked up the drive. "What's on this?" Amara looked exhausted. "Proof. But you'll only get one shot to use it. Once Rains knows I'm out, he'll trigger fail-safe protocols." Andre turned to Vivian. "Then we don't wait." By the time Andre and Vivian returned to NeuroSync, the sun had dipped low over the Atlanta skyline, casting long shadows between the glass towers. But inside the executive boardroom, the lights were still blinding. Polish. Cold. Victor Rains was already there. Charcoal suit. Cufflinks sharp. Expression sharper. He stood at the head of the table like it was built for him, like the board should feel lucky he bothered to show up at all. "Danielle," he said as Vivian entered, "I hear you've been chasing ghosts." Vivian didn't smile. "I caught one." She dropped the flash drive on the table. "It's all here. Unauthorized relay networks, shell companies tied to data redirection, private server access from offshore domains." Victor barely glanced at it. "You'll need more than hearsay and a USB stick to throw accusations in this room." Andre stepped in behind her. Still in his janitor uniform, mop tucked under one arm like a badge of honor. Victor raised an eyebrow. "This again?" Andre said nothing. Just walked to the wall-mounted monitor, plugged in the drive, and brought up the files. One by one, the evidence unfolded. Network diagrams. Internal logs. Time-stamped entries showing Victor's credentials accessing secured floors during off-hours. Even footage from a decrypted backup cam. Victor inside the restricted server room, inserting a foreign drive. Danielle's voice was low. "Controlled. Ice sharp. You used our infrastructure to build a parallel system. You rerouted user behavior data to a shell corp registered in the Caymans. You planted surveillance tools in executive offices under the guise of aesthetic gifts." Victor didn't deny it. He just leaned back in his chair and folded his hands. "You're not thinking big enough, Danielle. The company you're trying to protect? It's already obsolete. The real currency now is behavioral foresight. Prediction models. Influence before consent. You were just slow to see it." "You endangered a child," Andre growled. Victor finally turned to face him. "I didn't touch your daughter. I just created the conditions. The rest? Well, you and your girl stepped into the game. That was your choice." Danielle nodded to the security team standing silently at the door. Escort Mr. Rains off the premises. Effective immediately. Lock his accounts. Freeze his assets. He's no longer part of this company. Victor stood slowly. No struggle. Just one final smirk. You're going to need more than truth to fix this place, Danielle. No, she said. But it's where I'll start. As security let him out, silence blanketed the room. Andre looked at Danielle. You all right? She didn't answer right away. Just stared at the empty chair Victor left behind. I thought I built a company where trust mattered. Andre nodded. Then let's rebuild it into one where it still can. The next morning, the entire executive board was summoned. No agenda. No prep packets. No catered breakfast or light jazz playing through the speakers. Just silence. The kind that pressed against your skin like heat. Vivian Brooks stood at the head of the long oak table. No makeup, no blazer. Just a black turtleneck and calm fire behind her eyes. Beside her stood Andre Thomas. Still in his janitor uniform. Still holding the truth. Some of the board members exchanged confused glances. Others looked annoyed. One cleared his throat. Danielle, is this a facilities update? Or should we reschedule when you've had coffee? Vivian didn't blink. She pressed a button on the table, and the wall behind her came to life. A massive screen lighting up with security footage, schematics, and timestamp logs. Data. Movement trails. Encryption routes. All tied to Victor Rains. The room shifted. What is this? One executive asked. This, Vivian said, is what happens when you trust the wrong people and ignore the ones who clean up after them. She turned to Andre, giving him a small nod. He stepped forward, not with notes or a PowerPoint, just presence. My name's Andre Thomas. Most of you have passed me in the hallway. Some of you have probably nodded. A few of you never noticed me at all. He paced slowly, not out of nerves, but control. For 6 years, I've worked this building. Cleaned up your messes, literally. Mopped blood after a beta test injury. Picked up broken glasses after too many toasts to the future. He stopped at the center of the table. And in all that time, I've watched patterns. People. Access logs. You can tell a lot about a company by what it lets gather in the corners. He looked directly at them now. You trusted Victor because he wore nice suits and spoke fluent investor. But you ignored the red flags because they came from someone with scuffed boots and keys that jingle too loud. A long pause. No one spoke. Then Vivian stepped back in. We caught him, she said. But only because someone we all overlooked refused to stay silent. She let that hang. Let this be the last time we confuse quiet with unimportant. A hand rose from the far end of the table. Marla Jensen, head of internal affairs. And what happens now? Vivian answered without hesitation. We rebuild. Another voice. With him. Vivian smiled slightly. With him helping us see what we missed. Andre didn't say anything. He didn't need to. His presence was the message. And as the meeting adjourned, one by one, the executives walked past him. Some nodded. Some mumbled thanks. But one, an older man with silver hair and eyes that had seen too much, stopped and shook his hand. About time someone reminded us, he said quietly, that the janitor sees more than the CEO ever will. Andre nodded back firm. Only when nobody's looking. The boardroom was quiet now. Not the uncomfortable silence of secrets being buried, but the kind that comes after a storm has passed, when the dust settles and people start to breathe again. Vivian stood by the window, watching the morning light crawl across the skyline. The city looked different somehow. Not softer, just more honest. Behind her, Andre sat in one of the chairs he'd never been invited to before. He didn't look out of place. In fact, he looked like he belonged, because the room finally understood why he was there. Vivian turned. I want to offer you a position, she said simply. Security consultant. Official. On paper. Salary, title, all of it. Andre shook his head, slowly. I appreciate it, but I didn't do this for a badge. You deserve one. He gave a small smile. I already got one. Her name's Nia. She's 10. Sharp as hell. And she still asks me if I think toasters have feelings." Vivian chuckled. "You're turning down a corner office for a kid with wires in her backpack?" "Every time," he said. She didn't argue. Instead, she stepped forward and held out her hand. "Then help me build a company that sees people like her. Like you." Andre looked at her hand for a beat, then took it. "I'll help. But from the ground floor. I want to keep seeing the cracks." Vivian nodded. "That's exactly why I need you." Later that day, Andre walked through the lobby, no longer invisible. The front desk staff smiled. A young intern waved awkwardly. Even the security guard, Deshawn, gave him a knowing nod. People were starting to see him, not because he changed, but because now they knew why he was there. In a world that glorified loud voices and corner offices, Andre Thomas had reminded them that sometimes the ones holding the mop know more about holding the line than anyone in a suit ever will. And for the first time in a long time, he didn't feel like he was cleaning someone else's mess. He felt like he was building something new, something worth protecting. It started with a whiteboard and a question. What if the people we overlook are the ones most qualified to protect us? Andre had asked it in passing, one afternoon in the break room, coffee in hand, as he watched a maintenance worker reset a router faster than the IT guy ever could. Vivian paused mid-sip, then simply said, "Let's build something from that." And so, ShadowNet was born. Not a product. Not a pitch deck. A movement. Vivian funded the pilot. Andre wrote the blueprint. They started small. 5 buildings across Atlanta. Janitors, night guards, receptionists, cafeteria staff. People who had keys, eyes, and no one watching them. Andre trained them in pattern recognition, signal tracing, basic threat response. Not to turn them into agents, but to help them notice and be heard. The tagline was simple. You see what others miss. Let us see you. Each participant received a basic toolkit, a secure reporting line, and a voice in the monthly debriefs. For many, it was the first time anyone had asked them for their perspective on anything other than inventory. And something strange started to happen. Data breaches dropped. Internal theft slowed. Even employee morale ticked upward. Because when people feel seen, they start seeing more, too. By month 3, ShadowNet had grown to 15 sites. By month 6, they had a waiting list. Not everyone understood it. Not everyone supported it. But those who mattered did. And at the center of it all was Andre. Still in boots, still carrying a toolbox. Still walking the hallways with eyes that never stopped scanning. But now, people walked with him. And that, he knew, was how you change a system. Not by kicking down the door, but by giving the ones already inside a reason to believe they belong. On a quiet Saturday morning, the rooftop of NeuroSync shimmered with the first light of dawn. Andre stood with Nia at his side, her hand wrapped around a warm cup of cocoa, her curls dancing gently in the breeze. Vivian joined them, a thermos in hand, scarf pulled tight around her neck. They didn't say much. Didn't need to. The city was still waking up. But here, above the noise, above the headlines and algorithms, was something real. Steady. Safe. "I used to think trust was something you earned," Vivian said softly. "But now, I think it's something you choose to keep giving, even when it's been broken." Andre nodded. "Especially then." Nia looked up. "Does that mean it can grow back?" He smiled. "Only if you water it with truth." They stood there, 3 people from different lives, bound by one truth, that the world doesn't get better because someone at the top says it should. It gets better when the ones who've been overlooked finally get the room to speak. The lesson? Sometimes, the ones who walk in shadows carry the brightest light. Sometimes, the man with the mop is the one holding the foundation together. And sometimes, the smallest voice in the room is the only one telling the truth. So if you're listening to this right now, and you've ever felt unseen, this story is for you. Keep watching. Keep noticing. Because one day, the world will catch up. And when it does, it'll finally see what you've seen all along.